We've got Rangers, we've got Lightning, we got a rubber match, the third matchup between the Rangers and the Lightning this season, and we got a very special crossover edition for everybody here today between Locked On New York Rangers and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning. Welcome back, Ranger fans and Lightning fans. This is John Chick with Locked On New York Rangers, joined by my good friend Adam Denker of Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning. Adam, how we doing today, buddy?
Hey, we're doing great, John. The season's winding down. The Lightning look to be in some sort of playoff form. We'll obviously get into that, but yeah, it's really exciting. These last couple of games of the season, you kind of start to see a glimpse of what you're probably going to get come first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, it's always an interesting time of the year around this time because teams are starting to clinch playoffs, and then certain teams get locked into a certain playoff spot where they can't go up or down in the standings, and that always creates kind of an interesting situation as far as do you step on the gas for home ice? And I figure we can get to that a little bit later in today's episode, but for the time being, man, I just got to ask you about the Lightning and the general vibe around the team, how you're feeling about them. Obviously, they've won the Eastern Conference the last 3 years, going for 3 Stanley Cups in 4 years. Do they look like the team that, is on the road to potentially doing exactly all of those things?
They're starting to. They're
Yeah.
starting to. March was pretty rough. February wasn't that much better. January was really the highlight of the season thus far. And other than that, you take January out of the equation, it's just kind of been an up and down season for the Lightning. And these last four games, win or lose, they're in the midst of a 3-game win streak. But prior to on that win streak, playing a very good game up in Boston, and then you're really starting to see a really good performance out of Andrei Vasilevskiy, who has really struggled immensely this year. 2 shutouts in his last 8 games, which is obviously something you definitely want to see from your star goalie. So if he could get back on the right track and consistently play like this, I think the sky's the limit for Tampa as to what they can accomplish in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's kind of the same deal with the Rangers right now. It's interesting that you mentioned Vasilevsky, and I guess, by his own lofty standards, maybe a little bit of a down season for him, even though we know, Adam, there's goalies around this league that would kill for the season that he's having right now. And it's kind of the same thing with Igor Shesterkin. He went through some struggles early in the season, as did pretty much the entire Ranger team. But, I mean, if you take a look at, the past 10, 12, 15 games, however far you want to go back, I think Igor's at the top of his game. And I think that's kind of instilling some confidence into this Ranger team. I think Ranger fans are feeling a lot better. And, I think it would also be unfair for myself or really any Ranger fan, any hockey fan, to hold Igor Shesterkin to the standard of what he did last year. I mean, that was a season for the ages, one of the best seasons we've ever seen a goalie have. It's not supposed to be that easy. And, obviously he went through some scuffles this year. I don't think either Igor or Vasilevsky will win a Vezina this year. But man, as far as goalies in the Stanley Cup playoffs, I'd take my chances with the two of them, maybe before anybody else in this entire league.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I think we could all agree Linus Ullmark probably locked up the Vezina Trophy probably back in, I want to say, November, maybe a little earlier than that. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely right. When our goaltenders are at the top of their game, I mean, there's really no limit as to what our teams could really accomplish down the run. And my question is to you, because we kind of saw this with the Lightning, and it was also kind of a situational thing with us, is that there were certain nights where Vasilevskiy just didn't have it, and then there was other nights where he wasn't really getting much help in front. Was it more so the fact that you guys were maybe a little weak in front of Shesterkin at times, or was it just maybe a Vezina Trophy hangover that we've seen from Igor thus far this year?
The worst stretch that the Rangers had this season, and really, both seasons of the Gerard Gallant era, was in November and the fall of this year. It might have spilled into December just a little bit, but they were just playing god awful hockey, and Igor Shesterkin was not making the saves that you expect him to make. But by that same token, yeah, he wasn't getting any help. It felt like there were players on the Rangers who were skating around with pianos on their backs. That's kind of the analogy that I've used. And I'm watching this team early this season, and they really struggled. And I'm thinking, like, man, did I just like overrate the speed of every single player on this team? Because they just look so slow and so lethargic. They eventually got it together. The Jacob Trouba helmet toss seemed to collectively snap them out of it. But yeah, man, just kind of a nasty combination of Igor Shesterkin clearly not being at his best and also not getting any help whatsoever. They went through a stretch there where, last year, of course, they found ways to win. Any possible way you could find a way to lose a game, the Rangers are finding a way to do it. So it's nice to see that they've obviously turned the corner there, and the entire team and Igor Shesterkin alike obviously playing a heck of a lot better recently.
Yeah, that's definitely what you need, especially down the stretch from your team. I know from you use the analogy piano on your back. That actually I kind of kicking myself right now not thinking about that because really one player on this Lightning team that has really been skating around with a piano on his back all season has been Victor Hedman. I mean, a really uncharacteristic season from Hetty this season. The goals haven't really come in spurts. He's coming off a career high in goals, 20 last year. And really been dealing with injury, but he's starting to figure it out, and maybe that has something to do with Vasilevskiy's struggles this year. But um, we've spoken about here with the Lightning how Braden Point has just had a magical season, close nearing really the 50 goal mark, along with Nikita Kucherov eclipsing 100 points on the season. Who was it for the Rangers this year that has really taken their game up to another level? I think I know the answer, but I definitely want to hear it from the expert himself.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different guys you could throw into that mix there. I think Philip Hedl, hitting 20 goals for the first time this season. He's really, provide the Rangers with some secondary scoring. For a while there were some Ranger fans that really wanted to see Hedl play with Panarin, although I think Trocheck's done a heck of a job there, and I think they should probably stick with Trocheck and Panarin together. And, for the most part, you can always tweak it here and there. But the kid line's been fantastic. You've got Hedl, Kako, and Lafreniere. They've really played well down the stretch here and could really be an X factor going into the playoffs as well. And you almost start to take players like this for granted, but Mika Zibanejad, man, I mean, this guy just brings it every single night. The points are one thing that obviously jumps off the screen when you're checking the stats and everything, but man, this guy, he plays in all three zones, and he really does do a little bit of everything to help the Rangers win. Great defensive forward, huge part of the penalty kill, and again, just somebody that brings it every single night. He's always ready to go, and as far as players in the Rangers, he's probably the player that I worry about the absolute least. He's done a heck of a job. And how about for Tampa? You mentioned the one guy, but who else has really kind of taken their game to a new level there for Tampa?
Brandon Hagel, really, hands down, has just really been the guy who has stepped up time and time again this season. His numbers not exactly jumping off the page in terms of what you see out of a guy who is really the lightning rod of this team. I mean, we always talk about Stamkos, we always talk about Point, we always talk about Kucherov, but Brandon Hagel, after having somewhat of a really disappointing performance since being traded over from Chicago last year, really picking it up this season, kind of looking like Braden Point at times on the ice. So, Brandon Hagel really just been the guy who has really stepped up this year. Another guy, Alex Killorn, pretty much disappeared throughout the playoffs last year. John, you probably remember during the Eastern Conference Finals, Alex Killorn was probably nowhere to be found up into that point, and especially in that series, really bounced back in a big way this year for this team. So when you have guys like that on your lower lines and guys that you could just move around freely, it just makes a whole world of difference for this Lightning team.
Yeah, for sure. And, I figure I definitely want to talk a little bit about the trade deadline. Lightning were a little bit quiet this year, although they did make a minor move or two. And I figure we can get to that in a second. But first, Adam, shall we let everybody know about our new sponsor, Game Time here?
Yeah, I'm. In case you haven't heard, John, I'm going to tomorrow night's game, Lightning
Yeah.
Rangers at the Garden. It's a can't miss game. And listen, I had such a tough time looking for tickets, not only last minute, but looking for tickets that were affordable. And I went over to our friends at Game Time. Now, buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful like my time was. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you could stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the event and the fun that you will have. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. One more time, last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
All right. And Adam and I would just like to each thank everybody for making Locked On New York Rangers and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning your first listen every day. Both shows are free on all platforms, including YouTube. And Adam, just a second ago, I mentioned the trade deadline. Tampa, maybe a little on the quiet side this year, but they do go out and they get Tanner Jeannot. and it looks like he slotted in on the fourth line there, which is probably what you would expect.
Yeah.
They gave up a little bit to get him, though. They sent to Nashville Cal Foot, a conditional first, a second, a third, fourth, and fifth for this upcoming season. So, just your thoughts on adding Tanner Jeannot. It felt like a little bit of a tall price to pay, but the floor's yours, man. What were your thoughts on the trade there?
Well, there is a lot of names being thrown out there for the Lightning to pick up, and I think really as soon as some of those names started to fall off the board, Tanner Jeannot became more and more the clear cut choice for the Lightning. As we all know, over the last 3 or so seasons, the Lightning have basically made it their prime objective to get a third line player or a depth guy at the deadline, and Tanner Jeannot was no exception in that. Right, can score a little bit, had a little bit of a downturn this year with his scoring, but could still come out, play physical, get into the dirty areas, and that's something that the Lightning have really lacked this entire season. Especially, I hate to bring back the ghost of Lightning past, but with the exits of Yanni Gord and Blake Coleman and the list goes on of other players as well that, have left this Lightning team. Jan Ruda, Ryan McDonough, the list goes on of players who were able to do a little bit of everything here and there. It's been really bit of a almost a shock for the Lightning this year where they haven't been able to excel in those areas. So going after Tanner Jeannot was really at that point, once they zeroed on him, a prime objective. And yeah, I disagree with what they gave up. I mean, the Lightning's assets are already really depleted as it is. So giving up that much more to get him was really a tall order. He hasn't really scored that much thus far. He got his first goal the other night, though. So that is a little bit of a plus there for the Lightning. I think it's going to take him a little bit longer to get acclimated. He's still very young. The Lightning have him locked up for the foreseeable future. They have his rights. He is an RFA once his contract is up. I think at long term it's going to be a good deal. Obviously, John, with the price that they paid, Lightning fans want to see a little bit more immediate production. But I think in the long run, especially as we get into the late stages of the playoffs, if the Lightning do advance, I think a guy like Tanner Jeannot will be really the guy that they'll be looking for to help them out.
Yeah, I think his style obviously, plays well, translates well to the Stanley Cup playoffs. And as you mentioned, the Lightning have lost some of those sandpaper guys, those glue guys, and those physical players. And obviously, he brings that dimension. And as for the Rangers, obviously, busy trade deadline for them. And Adam, my head is still. I feel like even all these weeks later, the fact that Patrick Kane is a Ranger is like it's almost still kind of sinking in for me. Just kind of a surreal situation where they took a little page out of the Lightning's playbook, did some salary cap gymnastics, and found a way to make it all work. But it's obviously a very exciting time here for the Rangers. What did you think when they go out and they get, because Tarasenko was somewhat expected. Then you had Patrick Kane. I mean, pretty crazy, right?
Well, when from the outside looking in, John, when we all saw the Tarasenko trade happen, it was like, all right, now there's no way they could get Kane. It's either or, either one or the other. And then once you get the announcement that they got Kane, I think I texted you that day too.
Yeah.
I think I said, I can't believe you guys did it. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where not only it was a great addition, it was a no-brainer. I mean, we've been hearing about Kane to the Rangers, I think, since opening night. Really, I think that was a rumor that was going around for a very long time, because I think that was really the only realistic team that Patrick Kane wanted to go to if he were to be traded. And it's one of those things, John, and I'm curious how you feel about this. It makes all the teams, I mean, this is already a ridiculously competitive conference as it is. It makes what it makes all the other teams, including the Lightning, kind of pick up their heads and be like, "Whoa, like the Rangers are for real." This could be a very dangerous team down the road, especially if Kane goes off. Especially in the playoffs. How does that make you feel? That almost like, even though record wise, you're not at the top, but how does it feel that you're kind of like that team that's rolling around with the target on its back now?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's definitely a different dynamic from last season. Last season the Rangers were kind of the upstart team that I really don't think anybody took them all that seriously through the entire
Yeah,
regular season and even into the playoffs. Oh, they only beat the Penguins because they didn't have a goalie, and it's like, dude, we came back from 3-1
yeah.
against a veteran team that has a core that's won a bunch of Stanley Cups. So I mean, I thought right there they'd start to get some respect, and I think it finally happened once they got past the Canes. But yeah, man, totally different dynamic this season. And it's interesting because right now, it looks like they're going to finish third in the Metro. I mean, they could still jump one of the other two teams, but they would have to slump down the stretch. So yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you've got this arms race, and it's insane how many great teams there are in the Eastern Conference right now. You could really make a case for just about any of the playoff teams, the teams that get into the playoffs, potentially going on a run, potentially representing the Eastern Conference when it comes to the Stanley Cup Finals. So it's going to be crazy. And yeah, the Rangers have put together this ultra talented team. Just talented players up and down the roster, guys that bring a lot to the table. They were very active at the trade deadline for the second straight year. But man, they even in the first round, they are going to have a hell of a test because they're either going up against the Devils, who've beaten the Rangers 3 out of 4 this year, or up against the Hurricanes. And the Canes, one of those teams that's kind of been knocking on the door the past couple of seasons. And any year it could be their year. I know they lost
Yeah.
Svechnikov, and that's obviously going to hurt. But they're one of those teams that's been really close. They'll be looking for payback against the Rangers this year, I'm sure. So yeah, man, I could easily see the Rangers going on another run, but it's gonna be an absolute dogfight, man. There's no easy out in the entire Eastern Conference this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same for the Lightning as well. I mean, another rematch in the book in the works for the Lightning. They'll be going up against the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's pretty much been set in stone. I think since probably February, we kind of all knew that this was going to happen. Um, yeah, I mean, the Maple Leafs lost Ryan O'Reilly for the foreseeable future, kind of pretty much undoing all their moves at the deadline. So you're kind of starting from square one if you're a Leafs fan. But yeah, that's going to be a crazy series. The Lightning were down, I believe, 2-1 at one point, had to win. Had to come back and claw their way up in Toronto, end up winning in game 7. So, it's no easy test for the Lightning as well. I mean, and both of us, we also have to contend with the Boston Bruins. Let's just take a little moment to kind of appreciate the juggernaut that the Bruins have been all season long. We're in April right now, and I think, at least for me, John, I don't know about you, but I'm still marveling at the fact that this team, who we kind of expected to take a step back, given the age of their team, they've blown everybody away. I mean, you look at it this way, you advance past the Devils or we advance past the Maple Leafs. And at some point, if you continue to go, unless, they fall, you have to play Boston. And that's somewhat of a daunting task that you have to look towards to.
Yeah, the Rangers, they've played the Bruins 3 times this season. The Bruins won all 3 matchups, and there were times where it looked like the Rangers were a little bit overwhelmed and just, couldn't keep up with them. And to your point, Adam, yeah, I mean, we're kind of waiting for this changing of the guard in the Eastern Conference. The 3 teams that I'm just like waiting to, eventually collapse have been the Bruins and the Penguins and the Capitals. We got it with the Caps this year. They were actually
Yeah.
sellers at the deadline. The Penguins, they're like a cockroach that won't die. They're probably going to claw their way into the playoffs. So we'll see what happens there. But I mean, the Bruins, yeah, I mean, who could have seen this coming? Not only with the best record in the NHL, but the best record by light years. They've basically had the President's Trophy wrapped up since about December. Or that's what it feels
Yeah.
like anyway. Just crazy stuff. And yeah, man, I mean, just looking at the teams that are going to make the playoffs here, it's going to be absolute insanity and must see TV for sure. And I actually want to ask you, since we pretty much, we know that Tampa and Toronto are going to play each other. I want to get your thoughts on that upcoming series for sure. But first, Adam, I think we should let everybody know
Yeah.
that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat, but don't want all the fat and calories? Then you've got to try a Built Bar. What makes Built Bars so good? For starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievably delicious flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. You can thank us later. And so, yeah, Adam, I definitely want to get your thoughts. I mean, like we've been talking about, that this matchup has basically been set in stone. They played each other in the first round last year. Tampa, Toronto, superstars up and down the lineup, a lot of offensive firepower on both sides. And Can Tampa do it again, man? Can they turn back Toronto and continue this trend where Toronto just cannot get out of the first round of the playoffs?
I like I said at the top of the show, I think it really comes down to if we see the same team that we've seen from the Lightning over the last 4 games, I don't see a reason as to why not. Having said that, though, I don't think that Toronto is just going to roll over and die. I think this is going to be another 7 game series again. And I think that's the frustrating thing almost to a certain extent, especially in the first round, John. Maybe you could agree with me on that is that, you win the series and it's just like, kind of would have liked it to be wrapped up in maybe 5, maybe 6, but obviously we can't have everything we want in this life, can we? But
No.
I think that obviously at the same time, you can't just expect Toronto to just roll over. I think they're very tough. I mean, anytime you have Nylander, Tavares, Matthews, the Bunting, the list goes on of the weapons, like you said, superstars up and down the line. It's going to be a tough task, and I think really what it comes down to in that series is going to be really goaltending. Vasilevskiy, like I said, has been playing very well as of late. Now, can he continue that? Has yet to be seen. And I've been saying I actually said it on yesterday's episode of Locked on Lightning, how really I think that this week, these 2 matchups, tomorrow night against the Rangers and then the night after against the Islanders, I think we're really going to see what kind of goaltender we're going to get out of Vasilevskiy come playoff time. Now, um, kind of switching it over to you, what are you expecting out of Shesterkin going into the playoffs? Are we going to see more so of what we saw last year where he kind of carried this team at times? Or is this going to be a group effort where really everybody's going to have to step up and really find ways to just wiggle out a win on a nightly basis in the playoffs?
I'll get to Igor in just a second, but let
Yeah.
me just echo your sentiments real quick. It would be really nice for the Rangers to just one time have like an easy playoff series win, but
Yeah.
man, we both know, Adam, those are few and far between in this league. I
Yeah.
think the last time the last time the Rangers had an easy playoff series win was against the Atlanta Thrashers in like 2006, and they like swept them right out of the league basically. But as for Igor, yeah, man, I mean he certainly has that in him. He's certainly capable of stealing some games in the playoffs and carrying this team if the Rangers need him to do that. I wouldn't say that he's carried the Rangers recently because the Rangers as a whole have played very well. But yeah, man, he's back to being very close to the Igor that we saw last season. And in
Yeah.
our most recent episode of Locked On Rangers, I was recapping a 5-2 win over the Caps, and toward the end of the episode, I kind of commented that I haven't really talked about Igor a whole lot in this episode, but part of the reason for that is I don't feel like I really need to right now because he's getting
Right.
back to being the Igor that we all know and love, and he's just going to go out there and do what he does. I mean, you never know what can happen in the playoffs. Last year could have been a completely different story if things had gone a little bit differently because, game 3 against Pittsburgh, he gets shelled and he gets pulled. Game 4, same exact thing. Game 5, Rangers were down 2-0 in that game. If the Rangers lose that game and go out with a whimper, then that would have been a really long offseason. And I think there probably would have been a somewhat unfair narrative about Igor, like, oh, look, he can't get it done in the playoffs. So I'm glad the Rangers turned it around, went on that run that they had there. And I think Igor will be a big game goalie, throughout his career here, and I expect him to be at the top of his game come playoff time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious. My last question to you, with Igor is, can he do it tomorrow night against my Lightning? Both our teams have been rolling as of late, and I guess that's a good place to end it. Where Rangers are coming to this 7-2-1. My boys are 6-4. Unless John Cooper or Gerard Gallant has something else rolled up their sleeves in terms of how they want to roll out the goaltending situations. You're getting, superstar versus superstar. You're getting possibly another preview of a potential rematch in the playoffs. I mean, what are the keys to this game for the New York Rangers in order to pick up a W at the Garden?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, you got to stop that top Tampa Bay line with Point and Stamkos and Kucherov. I mean, that's obviously a very potent top line to say the least, and they're going to be matched up against Zibanejad, Kreider, and Kane. It would appear, assuming there are no line changes between now and the start of the game. But I could see this being a little bit of a defensive struggle. I mean, I know both these teams have a lot of firepower, but the way I see it, they're both rested. Tampa last played on Saturday, Rangers last played on Sunday. They're going into the first game of back to back, both these teams. So I got to believe, to your point, Adam, we're going to get Igor versus Vasilevskiy for this one. The Rangers in Tampa have played 2 low-scoring games this year. A lot of the games in the conference final last year were low-scoring. Obviously, the goalies have a lot to do with that. I could see this being a little bit of a playoff dress rehearsal here. There's no love lost between these teams. Obviously, they met in the playoffs last year, so I could see this being a pretty intense, hard-hitting, fairly low-scoring game. Obviously, again, you never know for sure, and either one
Yeah.
of these teams can go off and put up a lot of goals, but I see it being a little bit low-scoring. And if I'm going to toss out a prediction, I'll say that the Rangers edge them out with a 3-2 win, and give me Filipino to score a goal for the Rangers. But how about you, Adam? Any prediction as far as like a final score or anything?
Well, I think first and foremost, what the Lightning need to do is they need to come out of the gate swinging. That's been a problem for them pretty much over the last 4 to 5 months, pretty much the whole season. They come out and kind of just allow the opposing team to dictate the pace of the game, and they evolve as the game goes on, which is great. But it doesn't help if you give up 5 goals and you only score two, and you start to wake up with 3 minutes left. It's a little bit too late for that. On the other side, what the Lightning need to also do is they need to capitalize on their power play chances. That this thus far this year they've they're fifth in the league, and that's great, 25%. But don't let that fool you. They score in bunches on the special team. So really, what they have to do is be more consistent, get better chances, and if they could do that with their normal play in the neutral zone and give Vasilevskiy a chance early on to get settled, I don't see why not. This team can't go out and beat you guys 3-1 at the Garden.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And Adam, you're going to have the pleasure of attending the game. So let me just say, have a blast. Where are your seats? Are you up high, down
Uh
low? Where?
I think I'm up high. I don't remember. I bought them a very long time ago from our friends at Gametime. So I'm sure I'll find out when I go in tomorrow. But if I had to bet money on that, I would probably say it was probably up by the Chase Bridge.
All right, fair
Yeah,
enough, man. Definitely, share a picture of that on Twitter. Let it see
absolutely.
the game from how you're looking at it. And yeah, like I said, enjoy the game. And Ranger fans and Lightning fans, thank you guys as always for tuning in. And Adam and I will see you next time.